Welcome back. I'm your host, Stefan Marceau from the NanoCruising podcast. So today, we have Bruce Dyson Smith from the channel Sailing Wayfinder. In today's episode, we'll cover his background, the difference between offshore racing and dinghy cruising, his famous Barrier Reefs cruise. He'll let us know how he gets ready for cruises, and his advices and inspirations. Hi Bruce, I've came across your video. I think the video that I really liked, that really caught my attention is the video of you going to the Barrier Reef, which I thought was pretty daring. I mean, great. I mean, you prepared well. We'll talk about it later a little bit, but let's start with you, who you are and your background. I've heard some stories. So something like you lived on a boat for 12 years and then you became a landlubber and so on. So fill us in on your background and where you came from and how you got into sailing and so on. So I'd love to hear that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stefan. Nice to meet you. Yeah, look, basically, I grew up learning to sail with my family. My father bought a small trailer sailor, a 16-footer, when I was about probably 6 years old.
Right.
And we all used to go away for like a week at a time on that little boat and camp. So basically like what I do now.
Right.
My dad then progressed into keelboats.
Right.
He built a couple of boats and the family lived on one of them actually when I was a young teenager.
Wow. And in those days, people built big boats. That was huge commitments too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that was back in the early 80s. I remember our first passage we did. I always loved steering the boat. So my father got seasick and it was an overnight passage and I ended up steering the whole thing just because I loved it so much. So yeah, he couldn't get the helm.
You had the bug.
And then basically after that, I went away from sailing for a number of years, got into surfing. Right. I rode Australian surf boats, which are through the surf for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to sail with my father still a bit. And then I started thinking, well, I can put two and two together and sail to a spot where I can go surfing. So I got into my own boats. I bought my own keelboat when I was 21, which was run down. I fixed it up and lived aboard and did some coastal cruising with that. From there, I kind of bought and sold and moved up in size range up to 50-foot boat I had at one point.
Wow.
Yeah, that was an old single-handed racing yacht.
Right.
And in that, I cruised up right up the Barrier Reef to Lizard Island, which is up off Cape York. Taking backpackers and that sort of thing and just sort of having a good time. From then, I then sold that boat and bought a boat and went into the Southwest Pacific, went to New Zealand, Tonga, Fiji, New Caledonia.
Wow.
So I spent a bit of time there and I'd sort of come back and work for a while and then go for another trip. So that took me, I spent about, probably 14 years all up doing that sort of stuff.
Right.
After that, got married. My wife and I did our honeymoon was a trip to New Caledonia, which was a 3-month trip again.
Yes.
Unfortunately, my wife gets seasick. So after that, we moved ashore, started a family. I still had keelboats at that point. And then we moved up to Lake Macquarie where the boat is sort of semi-landlocked. You can get out to the ocean, but it's a lot harder to do than where we used to live in Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
When my daughters got to a certain age, I thought, maybe I'll buy a little dinghy and teach them to sail. So that's how I got into dinghy cruising.
There you go.
Yeah, bought an old Heron 11-foot sailing dinghy, fixed it up and took the girls out a few times, but they didn't really take to it.
Okay.
But I kind of thought this is good fun. It's sort of taking me back to the grassroots.
It is good fun. It is back to the grassroots, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah. And I found, just for simplicity and you can have much more of an adventure in a, enclosed waterway that you wouldn't have in a big keelboat.
Right.
Yes. And then I kind of started looking online and seeing this raid group, which was the Sydney Raid Group.
Yeah, you guys are blessed. You have a very huge group that participates. Well, I guess there's a lot of members, but there's a fairly good group that's pretty regular, which is great to see. So
it is great, yeah. So I wasn't on Facebook, but I joined it just to join that group. And And from there, it was really funny. I bumped into one of my main guys I sailed with, John, who I did my Barrier Reef trip with.
Right. Yes.
Out that we both used to race short-handed against each other in Sydney.
Right.
But anyway, so we both ended up joining Raid at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
He'd gone from keelboats to dinghies as well.
To dinghies at the same time, so you guys knew each other. So, and what do you find the difference between offshore racing and dinghy cruising?
The difference is, well, I mean, obviously it's a lot less pressure in the dinghy cruising because you're sailing a much smaller boat.
Right.
One thing I learned from the short-handed racing was just to have everything prepared so much ahead of time, because you're sailing a bigger boat and you've got to manage much bigger gear and everything. If it's not set up just right, if you're putting a spinnaker up and it goes wrong.
Yes.
Whereas in the dinghies, your loads are a lot lighter on everything you handle.
It's all the same parts. It's just much smaller.
And actually, that took me a bit of getting used to. I'm used to cranking everything on hard.
Nothing to crank. Yeah, nothing to crank.
Oh, everything, it's fingertip control almost. So.
But
other than that, yeah, basically that's the main thing, really. I guess the difference.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, obviously you don't get into as much trouble as you do with a bigger boat, as we were talking about. Like I remember an instance where I had a spinnaker wrap on an offshore race, and I ended up having to wind the spinnaker around the forestay just so I could keep sailing, because I got a big wine glass in it, and I wrapped the rope around it. And then this is in like 25, 30 knots of breeze, mind you. And
that's no longer a breeze in my world, in my vocabulary.
Yeah, but by the end of those types of sails, you're really worn out, and you can hurt yourself, and it's it's a lot more user friendly in the dinghy.
Right. But you still do pretty extended voyaging, I think, for your dinghy. Tell me about the preparation for that and how far that was.
Yeah, look, John and I were sort of talking about it for probably, 6 months beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sailed up there in the Keelboat before, so I knew the area, which is a good help. I just went through the boat, spent quite a few months just looking at, or as I sailed it anyway, just keeping everything up to scratch, trying to think of things that might break.
Right.
Having spares for that kind of thing, or at least tools that you can fix stuff like duct tape, for example.
Yes. Universally acknowledged to fix anything.
Yeah. And then, we only went out there for a week, so it wasn't a real lot of time. So we just had to make sure we had enough water for that period, but not too much. As you're aware yourself, in a small boat, you don't want to overload with extra gear just because of the weight factor, especially going out into open water. The boats, obviously keep it as light as you can is the way I sort of do it. We both use outboard motors because a lot of the places we sail, you can't row against currents, or we took enough fuel that we could pretty much get in and out of the islands, and then if we had to, motor most of the way one way or the other.
In case there would be no wind at all, right? That was your
thinking. That's right. And we're needing to get back in, back into the town we left from was called 1770, and that has a big tidal range, and it's not really a place you want to be going into in the dark when you don't know it very well.
Right.
Sail-wise, I did a bit to the boat because I actually bought the boat from the original owner, who was over 80, and he'd only ever used it for sort of a bit of still water sailing. It didn't have any reef points in the mainsail. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't really set up on it.
So you improved on that.
Yeah. What else do we do? We had to get the appropriate offshore gear, 406 EPIRB, for example, the right flares. Yeah, other than that, that was it.
And I guess weather preparation is probably pretty big on, the timing of it. You say you're going for a week or so. Weather can change, and then I'm sure that's a big part of the equation, is looking at the weather too, right? Your weather window for that. That's
right. Yeah, we had sort of a couple. We both worked, so we both had a 2-week window in which time to try and do the trip, and we knew the right time of year to do it. So it was the end of winter when generally the breezes do lighten off a little bit up in that area. we just looked at the weather ahead, and then because we had to drive 16 hours.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure we weren't going to get there and it was going to be blowing and we couldn't go or
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
we had a great window. A little bit more time would have been good. Another couple of days would have been nice. But if we were retired, for example, we could have waited out the bad weather out there on the islands and then kept sailing and, spent a few weeks. But we didn't have enough time to do that, which is something I want to do in further depth in the future.
And it was worth it. It was really worth it. You do that. You and John would do more like that. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would like to go again. And then maybe later this year, possibly again. And down the track further, I'd like to spend a month or two doing it and just keep sailing north up through all the islands, and then going with the prevailing winds, leave our boat somewhere, and then catch a train or something back down, and then pick up our car and trailers.
That's a good idea.
We'll probably do another trip like we did that one again and just go to the next couple of islands up. Because one of the issues with where we went was you're not allowed to spearfish or anything there. They're marine parks. Yeah, I've always been into my fishing and spearfishing and so on, so I'd like to get somewhere I can do a bit more of that and just some different areas. But it was fantastic just going over those reefs into those places where I'd seen before sailing past in my yacht that I couldn't access properly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you were able to go in much shallower areas, right? You beach your boat on one spot, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Or you go over reefs that you couldn't go before yet. You kind of looked at it and you'd go right over it, right? So.
That's right. Yeah, because there's quite a big tide range, sort of 3.5 metre tides in that area. I go rounding coral reef at dry at low tide to having sort of 3 foot of water over it at high tide, so which lets your dinghies access it. But I don't know whether we're the first dinghies to go to some of those islands, but I've never seen any out there when I've been there before. I'm sure someone's probably done
it. Have you tried to convince others in the group to go and join you in a bigger group?
Yeah, look, I haven't yet. It's one of those things you
need to plan.
Yeah, you need to plan, and you also need, obviously, people that are capable to do that kind of thing. Like the weather we had was really good, and most people could have done it in the weather we had. It's one of those things, if you're out there and it does go nasty, you sort of need to know that you've experienced that sort of weather before.
Right.
You see, John, as well as myself, has done probably the same, if not more, offshore sailing than I have. So we both know we can handle pretty much whatever we're going to get as much as we can.
That's great.
So, yeah, it's kind of a trip that you really got to know who you're with, and not saying I wouldn't go with more people. If someone else said, yep, I'm up for it, well, we'd look at it for sure, which would be good. It'd be great. It's good going. That's one thing I do enjoy, going with other boats, just so the company factor and also the safety factor. That was another good thing. If something major went wrong with one of our boats, there's 2 of us there. We can help each other.
Yeah. You both have a set of tools, different tools, and so on. You could help each other if something breaks down. Yeah, definitely. Going with people is always better for that. Absolutely. Any cherished memories and things like that from that trip?
Yeah, just arriving out there, like sailing, heading for a horizon with no land visible, and then having that little island pop in a view to begin with was just such a thrill. And to sail up to the island and see there's all these big yachts in there, but you're in a dinghy, it was just such a hoot. And also, the sea life that we saw out there, going to the other cays that we went to, we saw turtles coming up and down off the beach that were nesting, laying eggs. Yeah, sharks that were coming up around the boat, which you would have seen in the videos.
Right.
All that kind of stuff, you felt like you were in a David Attenborough video.
Exactly. That's fantastic. That's great. What about the other boulders that were already there? Did they come and see you or talk to you, or were they?
Funnily, well, we only had the first night at the island where nearly everyone goes because they can
Okay.
channel there. But we came into the Dinghy passage where all the keelers come ashore at, and we anchored in there, and we had a charter boat came past with all the people on board, and we could hear the guy saying, "Oh yeah, these little boats, these fellas sailed out from 1770 on those," and then we talked to a couple of other yachties that sort of were pretty surprised, I think,
Yeah.
to see us there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. And then after that, the islands we're at, we saw nobody. So
Yes.
it was fantastic. They're just beaches that people don't tread on very often and that sort of thing. So
Right. What about, I
yeah.
don't know how it is there. Do you have cell reception out there, or do you do just VHF between you guys, and you've got your charts on probably on your phone, I guess most people do, or an iPad now, right?
No phone reception out there, so
Okay.
you need a SAP. So John and I have our just handheld VHFs.
Yes.
Funnily enough, I still use paper charts because I've just had paper charts since I was young, and
Right.
I just like the ability of having that paper there. I can look at it.
I love paper charts too, but on a small boat, a little convenient sometimes, I find. But
yeah, it is. Or John has a chart plotter in his boat. He's got a proper 12-volt system. I don't have one in mine.
Okay.
I try and keep it. Well, actually, I do have a 12-volt bilge pump now, but at that point, I didn't have anything. So.
Right. I know you've built boats, so what are building advice for small boat cruising and so on?
Yeah, look, I've generally, funnily enough, I haven't actually built a sailing dinghy from scratch.
Oh, okay.
I've only sort of played around with them and converted them.
Yes.
The two that I sort of did were the two herons, which are on my YouTube as well. I did the first one that I taught the girls in was a little wooden one, which I put a cabin on and left the original rig and took all the seats out of it. And yeah, that was the second one. I made a yawl rig out of it. I put a cabin on it again, slightly different, and went for a yawl rig just so I could try seeing how the two masts went with heaving to and that sort of thing.
It's fun to be able to experiment on that size too, right? So.
That's right. Yeah, you're not spending a lot of money, and you can play around with them. And if you bugger it up, well, it doesn't matter so much. But those seem to work really well. I had fun doing that. But as far as advice for anyone looking at building a sailing dinghy, I'd kind of look at doing something fairly simple and quick to build to begin with.
Yes.
That's what I thought. But you see a lot of people that start these projects that goes for years and years.
You never finish. That's right.
Sadly get sold down the track.
Yeah, I tend to be more on the retrofit track. Find a boat that needs help, and I find it's a lot easier because you can get in the water even if it's not complete. You just adjust as you need to. I find that route a little better.
Yeah, I'm maybe the same. I sort of feel the same way. I sort of find something that's neglected. Both those boats were neglected. I also grabbed this old little sailing skiff recently and fixed it up and got it sailing, and then I gave it away to a fella who had a child he was going to teach. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I'm the same like my boat. As I said to you, I bought it. It was an existing boat. I didn't pay a lot for it, less than what you could pay something for. And then you're out there, then you don't have to, just for me, it's more about getting on the water.
So for those interested in dinghy cruising, what are your tips in planning and executing trips that you would tell them to do?
Okay. So probably for even like a weekend trip, you need to kind of start off making a list so that you can check off and know what you've got without forgetting anything, because we've nearly all done that, I'm sure. The other thing I would say is, just make sure that all your gear is up to scratch, like if things need fixing, fix it when you come back after your last trip so you don't forget about it, and just keep on top of the maintenance factor so everything's reliable and hopefully won't break.
Yes. That's good.
And like the other thing is just your weather forecasting, as we touched on before, your wind direction, try and just try and see what problems could arise and which way the wind is going to blow, so you don't end up somewhere you've got to then, say, beat back into the breeze that might be too strong for you.
Right. You've put your YouTube videos just for fun and so, but did it build a little bit of community for you, or people that give you advice or so on, or it's just for sharing your good time that you've done that?
Yeah, well, look, I started doing it just mainly so I could rewatch them when I'm old and can't sail anymore,
right.
And I can relive memories. I'll have it on record.
Yes.
But it has opened up a lot of contacts, which has been really nice.
Isn't
people overseas.
Isn't it? That's great.
An American designer made, or not made, but boat as well. I speak to a lot of guys in the States that sail day sailors. We even had guys in Japan contact me and talk to me, and Norway. It's been really, really enjoyed.
It's amazing. That's kind of the reason I've started this podcast, is to talk to all these people that I see and so on.
Yeah.
So, it's so great.
It is. And as you know, like it's a small community, like
it is.
As you probably find yourself, unless you I live on the waterfront where I live on the lake, but there's still no one else around me that does dinghy cruising. They all sail yachts,
yes,
or powerboat,
yes.
And so it does seem like it's a growing interest in sport, but it is so good. If it wasn't for the social media and so on, being able to contact like-minded people really made it a lot more fun. And I think too, because a lot of us sail solo on these boats, like we were saying before, it's so good to be able to go and camp with a lot of people and all talk about it and just enjoy it. And no one talks about their work or their politics. We just all enjoy what we're doing. And
right. That's great. Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. This is great.
Yeah, I guess inspiration-wise, that was the other thing you did ask me. Where did I gain inspiration from?
Yes.
My inspiration was mainly from when I was younger. I read, as a 6-year-old, my parents gave me the book, The Boy Who Sailed Around the World Alone, Robin Lee Graham. And
Robin Lee Graham. Yes, Dove, right?
Yes, read that forever.
Yes.
That was my first.
Right.
My first that really got me hooked. And then later on.
Even made a movie on that, I think, a long time ago.
I did have the movie as well.
I might admit to that as well.
And then later on, I just read all the books from everyone that was doing cruising trips. A lot of old ones I really enjoyed. There was one called Escape to the Sea by a guy named Fred Rebel. I don't know if
I don't know that one. Okay, let me write that down. I've got the crazy library of solo sailors too, and small boat sailors, really.
Actually, that was dinghy cruising in 1930s. He sailed a boat, a converted harbour skiff from Sydney to Los Angeles.
Oh, geez.
The Pacific. So that was a great read. There's so many good books, and a lot of them are the older books I find where, I just enjoy the early days of sailing places, the Pacific, when, there was hardly anyone there, that kind of stuff. Really interesting.
Yes, I read a lot of that too.
It's funny, when I first bought my first keelboat, there used to be an old second-hand bookshop, and there was an old lady that ran it, and she knew nearly every book in there, and she had a big section on sailing, and she'd actually met Robin Lee Graham in Fiji when she was younger, and funnily enough, so I used to buy all these second-hand books about all these accounts and voyages, and they're my favourites, all those early ones. Yeah, very good.
What message do you have for our audience?
That's it. I would really just say, look, life's short. Get a boat, even if it's not the one that you really want.
Correct.
To get out there.
Correct.
You can always move on and buy another one down the track, but just get on the water and do it. It's
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of help with people in these sort of groups that we're in.
Yeah,
And
that's great advice.
yeah.
Just get a boat and get on with it. Well,
Yeah.
it's been great talking to you, Bruce. Really appreciate your time. This is fun. Keep making
Yeah.
those videos, those excursions. We love to see those. Great filming, so it's
Yeah.
great. Really appreciate.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy making them. Shows what it's about. That's the main thing.
So, in our next episode, we finally have our first woman, Rachel Doss. She's what I call the ambassador to the Guppy 13. Stay tuned for that episode. In the meantime, in order to improve the show, I've created a survey. I would like the listeners to go to NanoCruising.com, click on the survey link, and let us know about what you think, how we can improve, and ideas. Really appreciate it. Until next time, seize your own adventure.